Hello guys, and welcome to my tutorial. In today's lesson we are going to learn about color correction using brightness and contrast in Premiere Pro. I'm using CS6. So each time you have a footage, you want to either increase or decrease its brightness or contrast. The first thing comes in your mind is an effect in After Effects in Premiere Pro called brightness and contrast. So you can find it in this is the project panel. You come to effects panel and scroll down in video, color correction, brightness and contrast. And this is how you do it. Just drag it, put it on top of the video footage, and this is how it looks. Scroll down. Here it is, brightness, contrast. So what this one actually does, it is self-explanatory. When you add brightness, you actually add brightness to the footage. When you increase the contrast, you tend to increase the blacks. That is the darkest part of the footage. So I believe there are other ways you can correct other than using the brightness and contrast, which I believe, to me, it kind of destroys the footage, removing all the details in the footage. So every time you want to try to color correct your footage using brightness and contrast, I'll prefer you use other options, of which I'll share in this video, because as you can see, as you scroll and you go towards 100% in brightness, it actually, the whole video becomes very white. Okay, this is because it's like you're increasing the white channel in the video. You're increasing them, doing away, removing the blacks, which is not a good thing. I can also share this in using a perfect example, using a grayscale PNG image here. In order for you to understand what I mean, I'll have to open another monitor called reference monitor. Okay, so if you open reference monitor and put it around here side by side, and then I add brightness and contrast, you'll be able to see what I mean. This graph here represents how this this image, how the color content, because as you can see, it is whites, grayscale and blacks, white, grayscale and black. So this line here represents the whites. It is actually an X. So this line represents the whites, also this one the whites, because it is actually it is actually two same images flipped, I guess, horizontally or vertically, probably vertically, these images. So these are the whites here. You can see whites. The blacks are the ones which are down here. This line here is the one that is here. That's how this graph really works. So when you add the brightness, you're able to understand that it knocks out all the whites. You can see all the details are being washed away by whites, and that is what the brightness does to any footage which you put in. So when you go to like a 50%, you can see this is white. It is turning also the grayscale area around the white also larger and bigger. So this white here is extending up until the middle. When you add the brightness, is actually crushing the whites completely. Okay, that is to do with brightness. When you come to contrast, and you add it, this is what happens. You actually increasing the blacks completely, increasing the blacks, doing away with the whites. Okay, as you can see, increasing the blacks, doing away with the white, and you only remain with completely two colors. So that is what brightness and contrast does to your video. It actually destroys the slightest details that you have in your video. So I will not suggest that anytime you want to do color correction to use this effect called brightness and contrast. When I go to my video using the same graph, if I tend to increase the brightness, you'll see what happens. It actually pumps, crushes the whites completely. Okay, fading away the blacks. You see what happens? See what happens, when you come to contrast, it stretches both the whites and the blacks. So the video now has two parts, the blacks and the whites, and you can see it here. You have most of these parts is totally white. Most of this part of this person here is black, totally black, which to me does not do a very good job, which I'll prefer to use other effects. So this brightness and contrast, it is not a good thing to use in color correction, and people still use it because it is still an effect in Premiere Pro, of which I think it is an old school way of doing things. For now we have so many effects, and you can be able to use without necessarily destroying our footage. So I'm going to do away with this brightness and contrast and show you a very good way you can be able to adjust your brightness or contrast using another effect called fast color corrector. You can find it also in the color correction video and color correction in effects in effects panel in Premiere Pro. So I drag and drop it in my layer. You go down, you see it has kind of color wheel, but you're not going to use that one for now. What you're going to concentrate today is only these parts, the input levels and output levels. So what this generally means, in the input levels, we have the blacks and the whites, and the in between is what we call the gamma. Okay, so if I tend to increase the blacks, you'll see what happens. You can see what happens. I'm increasing the blacks, but I'm not kinda making the whole thing black. I'm only increasing the blacks alone. I'm not touching the whites, and you can see the whites is still the white. Okay, only the blacks I'm touching, which for me this is a better way of color correcting the brightest and the contrast areas in the footage. So for example, if I add tend to increase the whites in this area, you'll be able to see that I'm only touching the whites, not the blacks, only the whites, and you can see the color, the colors reflection in this graph here. So when you come to a video also, and you add the same fast color corrector, you'll be able to see now what happens. Go down still to the level of input levels and output levels, but we are going to concentrate today on only the input levels. So this side, this generally means these are the blacks, this side this is the whites, and in between is the gamma, which you can go towards the left or the right depending on your footage, how it looks. For me, I'll go towards my the right, because the footage is clearly very very bright. It is overexposed, so we need to darken it a little bit without necessarily distorting the or changing anything in the footage. So what you need to do now, it is at 0. So when I push it towards my right side, you can see I do not only decrease the brightness of the video, but also maintain the the small details the video has, because you can even look at the flag in the video. You see it becomes now visible. So when I do too much of it, you can see it's only this part of this doctor here that is being affected, not the other side, not the other side. So I'm only working with blacks, I'm not touching the whites. So for me, if I do it until maybe 0.5 looks good. So even if you come here and toggle this switch here, fast color corrector, on and off, you'll see there's a very big difference. This was before, this is after. Okay, you can go on and see what this one really does, but you can see it does a very quite good job at this point here. So at this point, I can say this clip or this footage is at least better compared to this. If you tend to see what let me minimize this one and come here and add brightness and contrast for you to see what I mean. See the difference. For brightness and contrast, this is what happens. Look, when I add the brightness, look what happens. Everything in the clip is being affected. The whites, the blacks, so everything, because the whites are replacing the blacks. Okay, let me redo this one. When you come to the contrast, now the blacks, this is what happens now. The contrast, what contrast does is actually the places where it's black, it makes them blacker. Where it's white, it makes them more white. So you cannot be able to have like 100% control of what you're really doing, because you're eating away some details in your footage, which is not a very good thing to do, if you ask me. So I'm going to redo this clip and do away with the brightness and contrast. So if you look at the difference between fast color corrector and brightness and contrast, you see at least fast color corrector does a very good job in color correcting. That is an over brightness clip to something better. So at this point, I think it is better for you to use fast color corrector than using the brightness and contrast effect in Premiere Pro, which will probably give you a best footage and a better outcome. So whenever you feel like you want to adjust any brightness or any contrast in Premiere Pro, please don't go directly to this effect here. It really does a very bad job, and I've really shown you what it means in this graph here. To get this graph here, I actually came here and you right click, you come to display mode and you check YC waveform. You can come to composite video, it will show you the exact video. come here to click here, display mode, YC waveform gives you the graph, which you can be able to see the difference or what the effects are doing on the footage you have. Yes, thank you guys for watching this tutorial, and please like and subscribe.